Welcome to the Plant-Based Switch with me, Nafsika Antypas, where we explore the transformative power of plant-based living for your mind, body, and soul. Join me as we have honest conversations about health, wellness, and living more compassionately. Welcome to the Plant-Based Switch podcast. Today we have an inspiring guest, Robbie Lockie. As a founder and CEO of Freedom Food Alliance, Robbie is dedicated to combating misinformation in the food system through science and evidence-based food facts. He's also the co-founder of Plant-Based News, the largest vegan media platform with 4 million followers, where he has advocated for plant-based living and nutrition. Robbie's new initiative, Freedom Food Alliance, is focused on enhancing media and nutrition literacy for the public, making it easier for everyone to understand what they're eating and why it matters. Welcome, Robbie.
Hi, Nafsika. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast. Really great to be here.
Thank you for joining us. Your transition to focusing on Freedom Food Alliance is incredibly timely, especially in a world full of food and misinformation. Can you share what inspired this new venture?
Absolutely. Thank you, Nafsika. So I have been involved in sort of plant-based and ethical media, or impact media, as we call it, for the last almost 10 years. And in that time, I learned so much about how policy is skewed in favor of industry and how the public are not protected from things like nutrition misinformation. The animal agriculture industries that are vast, especially in the United States, and hold so much power. And in my time as working as a plant-based advocate and journalist, I learned about lobby groups and animal ag front groups and the effect that they had and the power that they had over consumer choices. And towards the end of 2023, I became increasingly concerned about the volume of misinformation and disinformation that I was seeing on social media and in the mainstream media. But I think it's important to establish the difference between misinformation, disinformation, to explain why I do the work that I do. Firstly, disinformation is something which is sometimes quite difficult to prove, but disinformation, think of it as the epicenter of the earthquake. This is the origin of the lie, of the falsehood, of the manufactured information that's produced by industry. It then spreads out through society as people share this information with friends and family, and it becomes misinformation. And so a lot of this data or this, industry-funded science can be passed from person to person because it's packaged in such a way that makes it sort of more believable or more plausible, because it might be delivered through an Instagram video with a person who looks like a doctor, but they're not a doctor and they're not a nutritional specialist. They could be a chiropractor or they could be an osteopath. These people are experts in their own field, but a lot of the time, nutrition has been co-opted by people who are being paid to peddle a false narrative about food and nutrition. And I just became very concerned about how much there was on social media and the fact that there are advocates out there, speaking out against it. But I wanted to create a centralized organization called the Freedom Food Alliance because I believe the public deserve to be protected from nutrition misinformation because, let's be honest, it is a threat to public health and planetary health.
That's very true. There's a lot of misinformation out there, and just because something is FDA approved doesn't mean really too much these days. But yeah, definitely very, very important work you're doing. As you work to promote science-based food facts, what are some of the most common misconceptions you encounter?
I think one of the biggest misconceptions that we encounter is the fact that people don't believe that the climate crisis is real and the fact that animal agriculture is playing a starring role in the destruction of nature. Giant factory farms are blooming all over the United States, taking up huge swathes of land, destroying rivers, destroying forests. Same here in the UK. 99% of meat consumed in the United States comes from a factory farm, and it's up to 87% in the UK. People don't understand the impact of their food choices every day. And so I think when people sit down and have a meal, in their minds, they cannot understand how their food choice from the grocery store is having an effect on the wider planet. But it all adds up, and that's the point. So that's one of the biggest things. Other stuff is, some of the stuff we all hear all the time as plant-based advocates, that you can't get enough protein, that seed oils are dangerous or toxic because, they're contained in our plant-based milks and our plant-based meats. But a lot of the time, this stuff has been seeded, you could say, out into society as disinformation in an attempt to derail, deflect, and distract from these novel food systems and these innovative new products, which, are frankly healthier. That, plant-based junk food is not healthy, but it is healthier than animal-based foods.
That's right.
And there's obviously a lot of misconceptions about long ingredients lists. There's a lot of demonizations of things like methyl cellulose, which is present in plant-based meats. You'll see animal agriculture front groups will mislead the public by saying methyl cellulose is a chemical laxative. But the reality is methyl cellulose is cellulose. It's like plant-like fiber that's used to bind, plant-based meats to give them good bite and texture. And as with any amount of fiber, if you consume too much of it, it can cause laxative effects. So a lot of the misinformation out there takes a grain of truth and then blows it out of proportion, creating a lot of scaremongering and panic around food and food additives. And ultimately, it's a distraction from the fact that animal agriculture and all the products that are being pumped into our society, and people are eating every single day, are having a detrimental effect on human health and planetary health, as I said.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of misinformation out there. And just thinking, like, sometimes you see these reports, you have so many reports, and you have to look the source of that report, like who's making that report. Is it like the meat industry? Like, I mean, it's very biased a lot of times, right? And then there's other stories you hear where, like, let's say a vegan person got really, really sick or almost died or something. This person, let's say, could have been malnourished in general. Like this person, a particular story I'm thinking of, where this girl, she wasn't eating anything. Like, I mean, you can't just say, oh, she died because she's vegan or she got sick because she's vegan. You got to look at the whole picture, right?
Yeah, I think sometimes eating disorders are often misrepresented as well, and there are many people who are suffering with eating disorders and hide behind their veganism. So they do care about animals and they do care about animal rights, but they might painfully control their food intake under the guise of not eating animal products. And so, there's a real challenge for health professionals and mental health professionals to try to work with people who sort of say that they're vegan or plant-based, but then they are eating in a really disordered way. So it's tricky and it's painful to see people suffering like that. But what happens is the media jumps on these stories, and then the headline is, young girl dies from veganism.
Exactly.
The honest truth is this young person died from anorexia nervosa, more likely, and severe mental health problems. And that could happen to anyone, whether you're plant-based or vegan or not, right? And so this is the problem we have. We have a media system that distorts the truth. They distort studies. They distort reality. I'm getting to the point now where we're not saying I'm not fact-checking anymore. I'm reality checking.
Yeah.
Because we are completely living in a new reality when we have individuals with so much power speaking on huge platforms, spreading huge amounts of nutrition misinformation on so many subjects. And it's really hard for the public to know who to believe. And that's the problem, right? You've got the power of the media, the power of social media, which is even, frankly, bigger than the mainstream media, and individuals with unchecked power on Instagram and on TikTok with millions of followers with zero qualifications on nutrition, and so they really are able to sort of exist on these platforms, say whatever they want, and no one can stop them. And also, what's really interesting is scaremongering often comes with like selling. They often are selling something, a course, a bottle of pills, some lotion or potion. So it's one thing that people really need to look out for, that if you're having these social media influencers in your feed and you're seeing them demonizing certain foods, it can be any kind of food, look out for them selling a bottle of something to you.
Yeah, exactly. Every day you hear something, an ingredient that's a whole food ingredient, and oh, there's something wrong with that now. You can't eat that anymore. There's like so much information out there. That's a thing. It's hard to know what's right, what's wrong. So that's why we need platforms like yours.
Yeah, and that's exactly why Food Facts exists. We're in the early days. The website only launched 5 weeks ago, so a very young platform. But my mission really is to protect the public away from corporate agendas, because obviously, corporations, which now frankly run the world, they have the power to manipulate the mainstream media and, of course, social media, because influencers are being given, $5,000 checks to say this or that by various, front groups. This is particularly bad in the United States. It is happening in the European Union and those areas as well. But yeah, it's really hard to know who to trust, and that's a very difficult thing to build.
Your ability to make complex nutritional information approachable is impressive. What strategies do you employ to engage audiences who may not be familiar with these topics?
A really great question, and creating content that connects with people, needs many different ingredients. It needs to be relatable. We can't talk down to people, so patronizing people, being aggressive, making people feel ashamed. These types of emotions often just push people away. And being a passionate ethical vegan for almost 12 years now, I've learned a lot about like what brings people to you and what pushes people away. And so I think it's important to meet people where they're at and try to understand, what are people's fears, what are they concerned about. If they're a mum, they're concerned about their child's health. They're worried, can I feed my child a Beyond Burger? Is that safe? I've heard that methyl cellulose is a chemical laxative. I saw the ad at the Super Bowl, and I'm afraid I don't know if I can trust that company.
Hmm.
And so, I think it's about helping people connect the dots. When I say to someone, where did you hear that? Tell me about that a bit more. And so invite people in. I'm a big fan of what's called the Socratic method, which is, rather than telling people what to do, you ask them questions and you draw out answers from them, and you kind of meet them in the middle, where you can, build a sense of reciprocity and sort of friendship with that person. You might think that you can't have a conversation with people who has polar opposite views to you. But I think if you want to learn anything in this world, we have to have an honest conversation. We have to bring people together around a table with different perspectives and different views, and have a debate, have honest and compassionate debate. But the problem with our world today is, because of social media, all it has done is polarize our society so aggressively that people can't talk to each other anymore
Yeah.
without becoming angry and confrontational. And if anyone hasn't seen it, please watch The Social Dilemma on Netflix. It is an incredible film, which is a damning indictment of social media, frankly, and the algorithms that have divided us on so many subjects. But I think to protect ourselves and to learn, we need to understand how these systems work and educate ourselves. And that's what I want to communicate on this platform. And this is what is media literacy, teaching people how they might be being duped, being lied to, being misled. And it's happening on a daily basis, throughout different types of media. And, this is the tool that I would like to use, which is storytelling, compassionate connection with people through social media, and not using hyperbolic kind of clickbait headlines. Building a trustful connection with people, I think, is the best way to do it.
I think it's the best way and the only way, because you don't want to come out, like you said, aggressive or, making people feel bad about themselves or anything. You just want to get them to ask the questions and draw them in that
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
Going back for a second to what you were saying about the social dilemma, that movie, that's on Netflix, right?
Documentary, yeah.
That documentary. I think I saw it. I think it's the one where I watched and then I just wanted to delete all my social media accounts. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
So 20 years ago, social networks appeared in our lives, and they at first felt like this incredible way to connect with friends and family. And they became, a bit of a revolution in our lives. And I think many people were very excited about them. Today, the landscape is very different. Social networks have become really giant shopping centers, shopping malls, where we try to live our lives in relative peace on social networks, but we are constantly bombarded with advertising. Every scroll, every second scroll has an ad. I think the average person sees over 1,000 ads a day. And you ask yourself, like, what is happening here? How am I being targeted? And behind the scenes, there are advanced and complex algorithms that are watching your every move, every picture you pinch, every like you make, every comment you make, every profile you visit is sending thousands of signals to a rather insidious algorithm that is monitoring every aspect of your behavior. That then feeds back to a giant system that then works out which ads it should feed you. Now, on the surface of that seems pretty innocuous. It's just ads. But the honest truth is that Facebook, well, Meta, holds so much information about us. We call it the psychographic data about us as individuals. And, if that information gets in the wrong hands of, individuals who might want to do bad things, spreading misinformation or disinformation, they have so much knowledge about billions of people, because I think Facebook has like 3 billion people on it. And so
Yeah.
the social dilemma looks at how these algorithms work, and it explains in really like quite innovative and illustrative ways how these kind of algorithms work and how they target us. So I watched it many years ago, and I was blown away by it because it's kind of stuff that I already knew, but
Yeah.
they really visualize it and they show you. And it's true. So many of my friends who watched it, I think it was like 4 or 5 years ago, they deleted their social media and they don't use it, and they don't allow their kids on it either, because there's so much beautiful potential with social media, great videos and documentaries and great opportunities. We connected on social media, but in between it, there's a lot of hateful content, a lot of misleading content. And as Mark Zuckerberg made the announcement 2 weeks ago, they are removing support for independent fact checkers on Facebook and replacing it with community notes,
Yes.
which is essentially run by the public. And we all know that the public cannot police themselves when it comes to misinformation. So we're living in a really uncharted time for social media and social networks. And I say to anyone these days, like, if you don't have to be on social media for your mental health, I'd encourage you to stay off it.
Absolutely. I when I watched it, I was so scared, and I'm like, I'm gonna delete everything. But I had to think about it because I have my TV show, my podcast now, and my food business. I'm like, I need to stay connected with my customers. If it weren't for that, I swear I would have deleted everything, and maybe I will one day.
Do you feel like since seeing that film, you've shared your personal life less?
I try to keep my personal to myself, yes, because it's scary, like if you leave a comment or like, and someone takes it the wrong way, or I don't know, it's very touchy. Like, we have to be so careful now more than ever with social media. So
You can't just be yourself and enjoy, a connection with friends and family. The whole world is watching, and I think that's
people will take it wrong too, like, because when you read a text, sometimes you don't capture exactly the essence of the message, but
absolutely, you lose all the nuance in the 140 characters I think you have in a comment.
that's right. That's right. What's that poster behind you there?
Oh, so this is a chart of the stars when I was born, and it was a gift. And the line says, "Our lives are not our own. From womb to tomb, we are bound to others, past and present, and by each crime and every kindness, we birth our future."
Wow.
And what that means is, from the film, it's talking about the lives that we exist as we live simultaneously in past, present, and future. And that each one of us, with everything that we do, every word, every thought, every action, we create a ripple of karma out into space and time. And everything that we're doing in this life is having a positive or negative effect. So it's a very Buddhist quote. I actually happen to be Buddhist, and I kind of live by that quote. I'm always thinking about, what can I do to be a better person? What can I do to support others more and be of service to others? So yeah, one day I'll probably have it tattooed on my side or something.
I love it. I love it. That's a really cool message. Discover the transformative power of a plant-based diet. The Plant-Based Switch app is an all-in-one wellness app that encapsulates the essence of holistic health and mindful living. Download the Plant-Based Switch app today or visit theplantbasedswitch.com. Make the plant-based switch today for your mind, body, and soul. Your background in media must be a huge asset. Do you leverage that experience to communicate it more effectively with the public?
Oh, absolutely. So I started in digital media in 1999, when I was, I think, 18, and back in Zimbabwe, where I grew up in Africa, and I was working in an online media platform, a news media platform. So I learned from a very early days on the power of like social platforms and what they can do using the internet. Fast forward 25 years, I've been through loads of amazing experiences with big digital agencies. I've worked on some of the most exciting online brands like Jamie Oliver, Getty Images, and those organizations taught me so many incredible skills: user experience design, digital marketing, email marketing, and of course, in recent years, sort of the social side of stuff. And when I started Plant-Based News with my business partner, Klaus, I was able to bring all of that digital marketing and all of those skills I'd had and acquired, like building websites, optimizing social content on our website, SEO as we call it for Google. I was able to edit videos. So I kind of came as a sort of one-person band, a sort of mini agency, and I applied everything that I learned from the media world to the plant-based news platform. But I've always been passionate about media and advertising, but I wanted to be able to use those skills for social good, because after being in the industry for such a long time, I didn't know how to get out. I began to hate it. I began to hate all the egos and the focus on money and the obsessive nature of the culture of advertising, because it is frankly all about trying to get people to buy more, take more, be more. It's a very self-serving world, advertising. I'm sure some of the audience may have seen Mad Men.
Oh, yes.
It's a kind of dark art, advertising. But the truth is, advertising can be used for good, and digital marketing can be used for good. So it isn't always about following the capitalist dream, which is about consume, consume, consume. We can use the power of advertising to inspire people to be better, to give back, to support, and build a more compassionate society. So I brought all of that with me. It's made a huge difference, because it's given me the brain of a marketeer, someone who is selling an idea. I'm here to sell an idea that I believe that a more plant-focused food system will protect humanity from what is coming with the climate crisis and, the onset of the destruction of nature. So for me, using these skills are essential, because we live in a very digital world. We live in a world that's all about image and how things appear and the message and the story. So yeah, I would never have been able to achieve all the things I have if I didn't have, the marketing and digital and media skills I have today.
Yeah, well, the digital world could be really an ugly world, but it's good that you stayed. You kept your focus and kept on the path that you started. So that's amazing. With your expertise in food systems, it's fascinating to think about how misinformation can impact public health choices. What role do you see Freedom Food Alliance playing in this transformation?
Food systems are fascinating because the systems that exist in our world to bring the food to our supermarkets and our grocery stores are vast. And a lot goes on in those systems, and a lot of exploitation, a lot of environmental destruction. And I think there's a lot that's hidden. Factory farms, or CAFOs, as they're called in the United States, concentrated animal feedlots. These places are destructive beyond measure, but they are often hidden. They're in places where, they're hidden behind giant walls, or, in giant sheds where hundreds of thousands of animals are crammed into disgusting environments, and that's obscured from the public. So with the Freedom Food Alliance, our work is about helping people understand how the food system works, how they can impact it through their choices, but also to learn and understand how misinformation and disinformation feeds the system and keeps it alive. Because as long as the public remain oblivious to how these systems are destroying nature, people will continue to make the choices they make. That being said, we have something called the value action gap, where people know what needs to be done. So people know that smoking causes cancer, and it says on the box, this will cause cancer, but people continue to do it. And that's a real metaphor for our society. We know that the climate crisis is damaging our world. It's changing the weather. It's causing widespread environmental collapse, but we continue to live in the way we do because it's easy. We go to the grocery store and the meat is there, easily available. We go to McDonald's or Burger King, and it's easily available to buy these foods because they are ultra cheap, and their price is maintained by government subsidies. So, it's important that people understand all of this, but it's very unsexy. It's very scientific, and getting people to understand the complexities of this stuff when people are just trying to survive, feed their kids, heat their homes. A lot of people working several jobs just to survive. They don't want to know about this stuff because they're like, the government needs to do it. The government needs to fix it. And that's true. Like, this is why we need system change. And this is the two parts of the world that we live in. There's system change and there's behavioral change. And I would like to work in both spaces, but it's a very long road. And, we're living in a world now where politics is, kind of turning our world upside down, with a lot of very powerful people who, have a lot of money, and their kind of agenda is not to care about people. It's to care about acquiring as much wealth as possible. So that's why we remain an independent nonprofit group. We act for the public, and that's important in this current world, I believe. So
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, a lot of people don't realize with subsidies, like the dairy industry is subsidized, right?
Yeah, subsidies are terrible because they are hidden and we're all paying for them. So
And we're all
even
paying
as
for
ethical
them,
vegans, our tax dollars are going to subsidize the meat that other people are eating.
even if we don't eat them. You know, I don't eat meat and dairy. You don't eat meat and dairy, but we're paying for it. It's crazy.
Yeah, we're paying for it. Our tax money is being used to destroy nature so that people, that corporations and giant multinationals like Cargill and the others, they are making trillions of dollars a year eating, encouraging, inspiring people to eat meat because it's profitable. When you can cram thousands of animals into tiny little sheds, you can make gargantuan amounts of profit because obviously animals just become a commodity, an object. And so, any care for nature or rivers or forests or anything that goes out the window because the priority is profit above everything else. Maximum profit, maximum growth. And, if anyone's seen, is it the Lorax by Dr.
Oh,
Seuss?
yes.
I was told that story as a kid, and that story is such a powerful story that I think more children need to be told these types of stories and understand that we live in a world of finite resources. There is no infinite growth on planet Earth. Our economic systems are all obsessed with infinite growth, infinite wealth, keep buying more, buying more, buying more, take more, be more. But nature doesn't exist like that. Nature is a cyclical system that requires a circular kind of function. Stuff dies, it goes back into nature and it has evolved. Whereas humans, we've come along in the last 200,000 years and we've disrupted the system so essential to life on this planet because we consume and we throw away. We consume and we throw away. We fill things with landfills, and it's just, yeah. And I'm going off on one, but I'm so passionate about this. I just wish more people would understand there is no away. We cannot just throw stuff away. It always goes somewhere. And when we take from nature, we have to find a way to give back.
That's
And
right.
unless we build a sustainable food system and a circular economy, we have no place on this planet, really. And I know that's a bit of a prophet of doom kind of statement to make, but until human beings learn to live in equilibrium with nature, nature will find a way to remove us. That's for sure.
Oh, yeah. Nature doesn't need us. I mean, it could survive without us and start all over again. But if
Absolutely.
need be, but that's an excellent point. In your opinion, how can we better educate consumers about the benefits of plant-based lifestyle while addressing their concerns?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think, going back to the point about storytelling and meeting people where they're at, we have to focus on what's practical, making life easier for people. When a lot of people switch to a plant-based diet, they don't know where to begin. They're so used to just cooking a piece of meat and boiling some vegetables, and they haven't, unless you're a foodie and, you love to cook, it can be really challenging for a lot of people, and especially families and busy moms and dads who don't have time to be spending 2 hours in a kitchen preparing some really complex meal. We need to help people understand that eating healthy on a plant-based diet is easy, but you just need to educate yourself. And both the American and the British Dietetic Association say a well-planned vegan diet is suitable for humans of all ages, and that's a reality. But it does require planning. We need to make sure that we're getting enough greens, roots and seeds, nuts and legumes, tofu and tempeh, things that are rich in, healthy fats, proteins. Because I think we talk about misinformation, like there's so much misinfo that we need to eat meat to be healthy. But again, a lot of people do not know that all protein originates in plants. Animals eat the plants, the protein in the plants becomes the flesh of the animal, and the people eat the animal. And it is an incredibly inefficient process because if we feed a cow 100 calories of grain, we get about 1 to 2 to 10 on maximum calories out. So it's incredibly inefficient. So this is why, again, a plant-based food system is essential because we could feed so many more people. As the saying goes, and I'm sure you've heard it, Nafsika, how are we able to feed 70 billion land animals, but we can barely feed 8 billion human beings?
That's right.
And so, inspiring people and helping them understand that a plant-based diet, let's just start simple. Let's start with simple swaps. Start with oat milk in your coffee, or, almond milk, or, something else, rather than using your dairy creamer. But there is also challenges in all these processes, in these conversations now because of misinformation. You might say to your friend, well, let's try swap out your milk for Oatly or oat milk. And that person will say, oh, well, I've heard that, oat milk is full of seed oils and seed oils is inflammatory and that's bad for you. And again, this is where we are. This is why it's becoming increasingly difficult to advocate for a plant-based diet, because there's all these blocks being placed very consciously to try to scaremonger people away from, or to frighten people away from plant-based diets. So as advocates and people who kind of, speak out to sort of inspire people to eat this diet or live in this way, it's important to educate yourself. When someone comes at you and says, I don't want to have Oatly because it contains seed oils, and you can go to them and you say, there is not a single study, and you can find all this information on foodfacts.org. There's not a single study that shows that seed oils will cause inflammation, especially cold pressed seed oils, which is what is contained in Oatly. So it's really tough to advocate for this lifestyle because of all these challenges. But I think educate yourself, learn about some of the sort of big myths, and be ready with links and things. But also, explain to people, and there's something called the bypass technique, because when someone says, I don't want Oatly because it's got seed oils, the first instinct is to want to say, is to try to debunk them. But what you can say is, a person might say, I don't want to drink Oatly, it's got seed oils. And you can say, well, oat milk is considerably lower in an environmental footprint. It doesn't contain saturated fat. It doesn't contain hormones. It doesn't contain bovine viruses. And you can tell them a lot of really positive things about drinking oat milk. And that's more likely to switch them over rather than telling them that they're wrong and trying to sort of convince them that the fact that they've thrown at you is incorrect, if that makes sense. So it's all about like understanding all these individual ingredients. What are the benefits of them? Take broccoli, for example. It's a great vegetable, lots of iron, cruciferous vegetables are good for you. But you'll hear anti-plant-based advocates saying, don't eat broccoli, it's full of oxalates, it's an anti-nutrient. And, I roll my eyes when I hear this stuff, but it's becoming such a popular conversation because of misinformation. So understanding, what does it mean to be an anti-nutrient? What is an oxalate? And understanding that when we cook our vegetables, oxalate levels go down to levels that are not a concern. So it's like saying water is poisonous and it can kill you. Water is poisonous and can kill you. Is that true or false? The answer is, it is true. Water can kill you. If you drank 20 liters of it at once, it would kill you. 2 liters a day, 3 liters a day, you're fine. So it's like mental gymnastics.
Yeah, exactly. Or when people say about the protein, like you were mentioning, that they get it from the animals. Well, I always tell them that's like recycled though. Like, why don't you go straight to the source, the plant source? That's where you can actually get the protein from.
And people say that plants are not a complete protein. That's complete nonsense. It's a myth. It might absorb a little slower, but humans can get all the protein they need from a variety of plants. And your body does something amazing. When you eat different plants, a variety of plants, your body assembles all those different amino acids in your blood and helps nourish your body. So that's why it's important to eat a diversity of plants in your diet and mix it up.
It's interesting to see how food culture is evolving. How do you think increased nutrition literacy can shift public perception of plant-based diets?
Yeah, sometimes I do feel like we're fighting a losing battle because we are up against industries that have a lot of money to push an alternative narrative to these things. But I think food culture will continue to change as long as there are people like you and I out there spreading information, factual information about plant-based food and plant-based food systems, and pushing back against all the negative stereotypes and just living our best lives as well, being healthy, fit people. I've been vegan, plant-based for 13, I think this is my 13th year. I have never been healthier. I have a few physiological problems from sitting at a desk for 20 years, but my general health and well-being is really good. I just turned 45. People my age who eat meat and smoke and drink and live quite hedonistic lifestyles, they do look a lot older. They have a lot of serious health problems that are happening because of their lifestyle. So I think trying to be the best person you can be, lead by example. And going back to the point I said about storytelling, explain your story, connect with people about how you have experienced this lifestyle in a really positive way, and always start from what you can give others rather than like what they can give you. Because I think sometimes we can spend time on social media, and it removes the humanity from our connections with others. People might message you, and you get this a lot, sometimes with friends and family. And, as I catch myself doing it, where you message someone straight away with a request rather than, hi, how are you? How's things going? And have a conversation, and I think that needs to come into the work that we do in our advocacy. It's about really valuing the person in front of you.
You're celebrating your 13th year. I just turned 10, I guess, in vegan years. So I've been 10 years vegan, and living a healthy lifestyle. I feel better. Also, no, definitely no issues on my side. So it's nice to see people and that have been vegan for many years and can speak to it, and when people ask like, how are you turning vegan? And well, I've been vegan for a long time and I'm fine, so
It's really great to hear that you've been vegan for 10 years. I think so many people have dropped the lifestyle that I've been connected through on social media. So I'm really pleased to see that you're still passionate as ever and healthy as ever. But there's definitely a caveat. There are vegans who have experienced serious health problems, and it's not a panacea for all ills, but it definitely, a healthy, whole food, plant-based lifestyle can reduce many of the leading killers of human beings, especially heart disease, which kills hundreds of thousands of Americans every single year. So, that alone is one of the best reasons people should at least add more plants to the diet. We don't all have to be vegan and, passionate animal rights activists, but I think, if we are all adding more plants to our diet, we're adding more fiber to our diet, which our gut loves, and that's, you can't go wrong there.
exactly. That's what I always say. You don't have to go vegan right away or even, with your own time, but definitely at least the very least incorporate more plants into your lifestyle, into your diet. Definitely. Your work often intersects with broader lifestyle choices. Why is it important to present veganism as holistic rather than just a dietary change?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, again, that comes into the idea of like where people can enter the conversation. Veganism, let's define what veganism is. It is a philosophy that seeks to exclude the use of animals in fashion, food, transport, and entertainment. And it was created as a sort of movement in 1945 by Donald Watson in the Vegan Society. But it comes from the word vegetarian. If you look at the word vegetarian and you take the middle letters out, it creates the word vegan. And so the idea with that is to take away the stuff that continue to cause harm, like eggs and cheese, and to create something new that was seen as a global movement for the removal of animal products from our food system, but also transport and entertainment. But I think, we need to make the lifestyle more accessible and help people understand that you can come to this however you like. You can come to it from a health perspective because you want to improve your cardiovascular health. You could come to it from an environmental perspective. If you switch to a plant-based diet, you can drop your carbon footprint by over 70%. You can drop your fresh water footprint by up to 50%. So there's lots of really good positives about why eating more plants is good for the environment. And then there's obviously the compassion side. If you're a spiritual person, if you're a religious person, I think that leading with compassion is something that a lot of people would like to do, but they just don't know how. And this is where we get cognitive dissonance, where people say, I love animals, but then they will go home and eat an animal. And there's this kind of paradox that exists in their lives. You'll see grown men stop an entire freeway to rescue some ducks and some babies and their babies, ducklings, running across a freeway. And then they'll get back in their car and they'll go home and they'll tuck into, some KFC or a chicken. So, we are living in a world of paradoxes. And I think it's sometimes important to accept that, accept that humans are paradoxical in our mindset sometimes. And patience is really important. I think it's a big part of the conversation. So I lost my train of thought there.
It's okay. I think it's is it Socrates or Aristotle that said, "Don't talk to me about love and peace when you have a dead animal on your plate." So that's right.
I think that was thousands of years ago.
Yeah, exactly. Let's switch gears for a bit. For some rapid fire questions. Okay, just your thoughts. No pressure. What's the most surprising food fact you've come across recently?
So the most surprising food fact is the efficiency aspect of food. Learning that if you feed cows 100 calories, you only get around 3 calories out. That is shocking because it really speaks to the very nature of our food system and how inefficient it is.
Yeah, that is interesting. What's your favorite plant-based dish that you think everyone should try?
I'm really boring. I love a Buddha bowl with like brown rice or red rice with steamed broccoli with some nutritional yeast on top, some baked tofu or tempeh with some like edamame and spices, and some sort of grilled nuts and seeds with smoked paprika and soy sauce with lots of sort of crunch. That's the kind of thing that I like to eat because it's got everything you need in there, all your fats, your proteins, and your carbs, really healthy and delicious.
Yum,
Oh,
yum.
and tahini. I got to have my tahini on top.
Nice, nice. And your favorite smoothie?
My favorite smoothie would probably be, it's called the Green Goddess smoothie at my favorite vegan restaurant here in London. Um, they do lots of greens, green apples, I think half a lemon. It's kind of tangy and sweet and green and super healthy.
Awesome. Great. Mine is banana strawberry with freshly squeezed orange juice inside. I love it. Okay, so going back to what we were talking about before, what's the most exciting development in the plant-based space that you've been looking forward to?
What's the most exciting plant-based innovation? I mean, I would say the innovations around cheese are exciting to me. Cheese are one of the biggest things that people struggle with most. I find a lot of people give up meat
That's why
really
I launched
easily.
Nafsika's Garden vegan cheese line. Hopefully, it'll be in your neck of the woods soon. But I think
I
that's
hope
the
so. Yeah.
cheese is definitely the big obstacle, I think, and then that's why I did it. But yeah.
It's cheese, but I would say sort of some of the innovative new tools or machines to make plant-based meats are really exciting. So there's a brand here in the UK called Juicy Marbles, and they are now available in a lot of our major supermarkets. And this plant-based meat is a sort of steak, it's kind of round steak-like shape. And I've made it for friends, and they are absolutely blown away that this is a plant-based meat. It's got all the marbling, it's got the sort of juiciness, it's got the stringy kind of fibrous nature of a beef, a medallion. And it's those technologies that are just getting better all the time, and the ingredients are getting cleaner as well. They're simplifying their ingredients. You've got pea protein, beet juice, nutritional yeast, added B12 and iron, and it's kind of it's on par with a piece of beef. It matches. Well, you should say nutrient parity is something that I'm really passionate about. We can't be out there promoting plant-based meats and plant-based milks if we don't have at least sort of nominal nutrient parity with at least the same amount of protein as the animal-based counterparts. So I think that's really important.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
yeah, cheeses and clever new ways to make plant-based meats.
Actually, yeah, that's true. Like I have a yogurt line, and I have calcium in there, and phosphorus, and B12. So people who eat normally yogurt, they can't say, "Oh, yeah, where am I going to get my calcium from?" Well, there you go. Like you have to kind of make it equivalent, and a bit in these types of foods. Yeah. How do you envision the future of food education evolving in the coming years?
I would say that we are going to be relying less and less on our governments to learn about the food system, and we'll be relying more and more on independent platforms like Food Facts, because it's happening everywhere. As I say, governments are being co-opted by corporations, and corporations have political and profit agendas at their very core. And so, charities, nonprofits, organizations that are for the public good, owned by the public, this is where we need to be turning to and supporting as well. I'm not getting any money or support from government, even though I'm providing a public service for free. And I'm working with experts. I'm working with dietitians and registered nutritionists and food scientists. These are people who are giving of their time because they're passionate about protecting the public from nutrition misinformation, which is vital. And I think that these platforms are appearing all over the place. There's more and more happening all the time. But I think it's key that we bring people together, and I think that reciprocity between these organizations is key as well. I have a lot of friends who work in the nonprofit space, and it can be very hard to get support and funding. But I think when people work together and they share resources and share knowledge, we're unstoppable.
Well, thank you so much, Robbie, for joining us today and sharing your insights on food literacy and plant-based living. Your commitment to fighting misinformation and promoting informed choices is truly inspiring.
Thanks so much, Nafsika. Really enjoyed being on the show. And thanks for having me on and letting me share all my passions and this great work I'm doing at the moment.
For our listeners, if you want to learn more about Robbie's work at Freedom Food Alliance, be sure to visit foodfacts.org. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, rate, and leave a review. Your support helps us spread the word about the importance of nutrition literacy and plant-based lifestyles. Remember, every informed choice contributes to a healthier planet. Until next time, keep exploring and making thoughtful food choices. Thanks for tuning in to the Plant-Based Switch. I'm Nafsika Antypas, helping you throughout your plant-based journey. And remember, if you plant it, it will grow.